tooth and nail just to get a list of people in the Reform Party that he can solicit money from. He doesn't have a lot of money. It's tough to raise money when he's almost a fourth party candidate now, trying to fend his own way. And they're doing lots of interviews. I had to laugh. They said, it's not like we can't afford an airline ticket. We're sending him to Wichita this weekend, after all, which is about $55, I think. So he's got an uphill fight, and he desperately wants that interview, and Ross Perot just will not give in to anything Lamb wants at this point, it seems.
Kevin Flynn, final words.
Yet, despite all this, in the voter preference survey of all the party members, Dick Lamb got about 28%. And frankly, that's not too bad for someone who just jumped into the race and is an unknown factor. Showed very heavily in California, very good results in California.
Also in politics, we have a primary election coming up a week from Tuesday. A couple of the high visibility races, or higher visibility, include the Democrats fighting to replace Pat Schroeder. Guy Kelly?
Yeah, Pat Schroeder's finally retiring after 24 years in Congress. That's opened up the race for Democrats in Denver. We have a state legislator, Diana DeGette, who's running against former Denver council member Tim Sandos. They're both pretty solid local representatives. Diana DeGette has raised a lot more money than Sandos, though, and is going on the air with commercials in the last few days before the election, which can make a difference. Tim Sandos doesn't have the money to do that at this point. So that's she's got about $93,000 cash. He's got about 14 grand with 10 days or so to go to the election, and that could make a big difference.
And Chris Lopez, who also covers the same topic. We have two people who've spent a lot of time in politics.
Yeah, they're both they both held elected office before, and you haven't heard a lot about this race. Both candidates have stayed away from any personal attacks, which I think sometimes drives the media. So they've been very low key in terms of going out, doing a lot of neighborhood walking, a lot of grassroots campaigning. But one of the interesting things that they're running into as they hit the streets trying to get votes is people don't believe Pat Schroeder's retiring. There was a lady in off the neighborhoods around University Boulevard who I was with Diana DeGette walking with her, and the lady, Diana, kept trying to impress upon her that I'm running for Pat Schroeder's seat, I'm running for Pat Schroeder's seat, and the lady was having none of it. She said, Pat Schroeder will run, you watch and see, Pat Schroeder will run. People just cannot believe that she's not going to be there as their congresswoman, and they're having a difficult time campaigning like that.
And back to Guy Kelly, another race, again, the Democrats for the U.S. Senate, Tom Strickland and Gene Nickel.
That's been, unlike the DeGette-Sandos race, they have gotten personal, and there's a lot of ill will between those two. Nickel has gotten into calling Strickland that he's saying that he's buying the campaign and is only representative of special interest. But then Nickel got himself into some trouble when he pressured former CU President Judith Albino for a campaign contribution. He was afraid his handling of that situation at CU when he was dean of the law school was going to come back to haunt him. He wanted to defuse that with a contribution from Albino. At one point asked her to backdate a check so it could show up on the next contribution filing. That was a mistake. He admits it. He said it was a boneheaded move. And for someone who's been campaigning as Clean Gene, that's sort of stuck to him. But Strickland, on the other hand, has gotten a ton of money from a lot of special interests, and Mr. Nickel is trying to play off of that.
The primary, again, is a week from Tuesday. Do some reading and have an opportunity to express with your vote. Let's do some other topics on tonight's broadcast about, phone service. In your home, the connections will change. Henry Dubroff.
Well, this week, the Federal Communications Commission took the first of what's going to be a series of great big steps toward allowing other people other than US West or whoever your local phone company is to offer you the dial tone and to package that with long-distance service and perhaps cable television and perhaps even special movie channels and other things that will come through your cable. It will take some time to sort this out, but the hope is that prices will go down as competition comes into the market.
The hope is, there's no guarantee.
There is no guarantee, but part of this whole endeavor is to let the market set prices. And I think with utilities, as we've seen with long distance, as we're starting to see with electric and natural gas rates, that as more people are allowed to offer you services, prices do tend to come down. I think the problem is going to be that US West and others will want price hikes before the game is opened up. And one thing that the FCC did August 1st is that they told the states to take charge of this issue. And I think in Colorado we will be watching and will hold US West to a real fine line in terms of any price hikes.
US West is suffering a problem of they have a great deal of baggage. The startup companies don't, and so it's really tough to compete. The result, they're laying off people.
US West is going to shed about 5,000 workers over the next few years. They put out a rather hotly worded memo saying we've got some time, but we've got to make these changes before competition comes in. US West does have to get its costs down. And one thing that they have to prepare for is spending a lot of money on marketing, on rolling out new services, on using new technology in order to compete with these upstarts who you point out start with a clean slate. US West owns the switches that allow the upstarts to actually get from a kind of a network into your home or business. And so there's a whole rear guard action being fought by US West to protect the switches and to protect the pricing that the upstarts get to pay for the switches. It's going to be very interesting to watch.
Henry Dubroff of the Denver Business Journal. Next, we're going to talk about the Rocky Mountain Arsenal. For 40 years, man polluted it in a major way. In fact, it's one of the most polluted areas in the United States. Now, for the next 30 years, going to clean it up. The result? Gary Gerhardt.
Don, we're going to jump forward to the past out at the Arsenal. We're going to try to take this land that has been polluted for so many years and turn it back into what it was before many humans were here. Native Americans perhaps, but before the white man was here. And what they want to do is try to make this a demonstration center to show people that go out there what the shortgrass prairie was like before the white man arrived.
17,000 acres for change.
Right. Of that 17,000 acres, there are just pockets that have this that are highly polluted. But those pockets are going to take 30 years, of course, to try to come up with or try to get rid of the pollution that was there, and it's going to cost billions of dollars to do. This is aside from that. This is a component that will turn this into a wildlife refuge once all of that is done. But they don't want to wait for the whole 30 years to get started on it because they'd lose a whole generation of people if they did. So they're starting right now to put in whatever components they can around all of the cleanup activity.
This is going to be something akin to a huge park. People will go out, not mingle with the animals, just look.
Yeah, down in the southern, there are two zones. The northern zone will be the shortgrass prairie zone. The southern zone is going to be left a wetlands, and that wetlands was created by humans that came in and set up irrigation and things like that, and also for the ponds and things that were used by the manufacturer of the pesticides and the chemical weapons for war out there. So those are going to be left. Now people can go down in that riparian area and they can fish down there, or they can bird watch, or in some ways mingle with the animals, so to speak. But when you get up into the upper areas, that's going to pretty much strictly be by bus. And there'll be tour buses that'll take you out there, and they'll have people on board that can explain what's going on. It'll be, I guess, kind of fun to go out and see these animals.
For comparison purposes, you noted that it will be roughly 20 times larger than Central Park in the center of New York City.
20 times larger and about 2,000 times safer.
And with all of the reintroduction of animals, there won't be any bears.
Unfortunately, no bears, no lions, and no wolves out there at the present.
And speaking of bears, Tom Beck of Colorado wrote a little article, an ethics piece about hunting bears, and it just kind of exploded.
Yeah, it sure did. This piece that he wrote is an essay that's going to appear in a book of essays on hunting, and Tom is the bear expert for the State Division of Wildlife, and because of his opposition to spring bear hunting and to the use of bait and hounds previously, he has gotten the reputation of being an anti-hunting person, which is as far from the truth as you can get. Tom loves to go out and hunt. But what traditionally what hunters like their biologists to do is stick with biology, and that means find ways to come up with more animals for them to go out and hunt. And Tom and a lot of people at the Division of Wildlife realize there are 3 other components that have to be taken into account: economics, politics, and then social acceptability, which is the ethics of it. And now they're talking more about the fact that people are getting involved in the outdoors, are getting involved in these subjects. They want the ethics to be a part of what's going on, and they have to be addressed.
The article was to be called Failure of the Spirit, and it's failure to be printed.
That's exactly right. It was going into Outdoor Life, which is one of the big 3 hunting and fishing magazines. And when they heard that, when the word got out that Tom was the one that was involved in this, a group of hunters up in Michigan started a campaign, an email campaign, to try to get the article taken out of the magazine. Not even having seen the article, they didn't know what it even said. And some of the people at Times Mirror, which owns the magazine, did cave into this. It so enraged the editor-in-chief and the executive editor that both of them resigned in protest.
And it will not be published, at least in that publication.
Not at this time.
Gary Gerhardt, just a couple lines. Over the last few years, we've been talking a great deal about the wolves. Seems they've been eating a few sheep just outside Yellowstone Park.
Yeah, they do enjoy those sheep, but they've done pretty well too with the bison and the elk inside the park. No, everybody knew when they put the wolves in that they were not going to stay within the park. The ecosystem is 13 million acres. It's not 2.2 million acres, and we knew they were going to use the whole 13 million. So we knew that there were going to be problems. But there is a fund set up to pay these ranchers for any losses they have. That's not going to satisfy the ranchers, of course, because the issue is much broader than just wolves.
And just a line, they are taking some of these wolves and putting them back in pens in the park, saying, stay put.
Best to keep them in the park right now, especially the ones that have young. And they'll put them in there and try to get them acclimated again to the park and hope that this time they'll stay.
Gary Gerhardt, Rocky Mountain News. Well, that's our broadcast for this week. For my colleagues, I'm Don Kenny. Have a good weekend.
Funding for the state of Colorado is provided by the Adolph Coors Foundation, the Monfort Charitable Foundation, and the investment firm of Piper Jaffray and its employees, looking toward the future since 1895. The State of Colorado, now in its 18th year, is produced in cooperation with Rocky Mountain Reflections. The State of Colorado provides background on issues of this week, Friday at 7:30, Sunday at 2:30.
Additional funding for the State of Colorado